And it's interesting you said that, because I had Kim Kiyosaki in here, and she said the same thing you just said. She said, and especially when it comes to women, and I'd like to talk about this as well, because I know both you and Kim are big into trying to educate women about finance. But she said, a lot of people, not just women, but people too, they get scared when they hear about gold or an option or something they don't understand. She said, okay, go buy one piece of gold. Or in your case, go buy one of Nomi's 25-cent options. It literally costs you 25 cents. And watch it. Watch it for those 4 days or 7 days. Watch what the market, watch what go up or down. And you'll see, maybe make $1, maybe it'll go to zero, but you'll understand it. And once you do that, you can really, I always describe it, it's like getting to know a person. Each one of these instruments has a personality. Some are like axe murderers, and some are boring. They're like your grandpa. Some are reliable, some are unreliable, but they all have these personalities. Just wanted to get your thoughts on that, and then just educating women in finance.
Yeah, so it's interesting because I know that a lot of, and I've had the honor really of being able to work with Kim Kiyosaki on different things, and I mean, she's such a force for women, and in terms of how she does approach investment. So when she does look at a real estate investment, she's not just looking at it from, can it go up, or even do I like it? She's actually looking at all the sort of 360 degree sides of it. How can it go down? How can I extract money from it over time? Does it make sense for various different reasons? And she really does do her homework on every single thing. And one of the things that she and I have talked about, and that I really strongly believe in terms of women, and people doing their homework in general about any type of financial investment, is that the more you do yourself, the more you learn what to watch and what questions to ask, and that makes you a better and more confident investor, and also a more confident human. I mean, I think over years, and I see this with the women I talk to, who, for example, let the men in their lives handle the finances. This is still a thing. Say they're married, the husband handles the finances, and let's say there's a divorce or a death or some situation where all of a sudden they are required to sort of step up, and they don't have the language, and they haven't developed their own experience to be able to do it for themselves, and that creates it creates uncertainty, it creates stress. I mean, there's a lot of things that
which
happen.
hurts the relationship and the family too, right?
Exactly, and so it's the same thing with female students. So at any point of life, is that for example, student debt's very big, and how can one handle that and manage that going forward into the workforce, and I think with women in particular, there's a sense that economics, that finance, and so forth isn't really their thing. Now, not with all women, and it's changing. But I don't think it's necessarily changing fast enough, and I think part of the reason for that, women multitask a lot of things, and one of the elements of finance and investing is that you do have to learn a new language in order to be confident with it. And it's like learning Spanish or French or anything else, like you have to practice. And you have to practice, whether it's first on paper, whether it's, as Kim talks about, doing like one little share or like one little thing or one little real estate investment, starting small, and just becoming comfortable. And so that's one of the things that I talk to women about, I know she talks to women about this as well, is that the more comfortable you feel with financial elements, the better you'll be at managing them, the better decisions you'll make, and the more confident and like empowered you'll be in your own life, in any aspect of your life, not just with respect to money.
Yeah, I think it's super important. When about a year ago, I was out in Phoenix to do something with Robert Kiyosaki, and you were there as well. Yeah. And I know you were on the Rich Dad radio show, and Robert Kiyosaki was telling me about you, and he said, Brian, what I love about Nomi is she brings this kind of female energy into the financial space that's traditionally been dominated by this male energy. Mm-hmm. And we're doing a movie right now that kind of explores different aspects. And I mean, men and women can both have female and male energy. Mm-hmm. And, one, you could kind of roughly say one's super aggressive, one more is nurturing and more long-term thinking. Mm-hmm. But do you ever think about that when it comes to money? Because it sounds like your risk management sensibility comes from like this female energy.
Yeah, it's interesting because that's been, throughout my career, as I've always looked at or tried to look at as many sides of a strategy, upside and downside, as possible. And and also within Wall Street, I always thought that numbers, that the actual finance of finance, how things move, the mathematical components of it, don't care whether you're a man or a woman, right? It's more a question of how you use them. And that might the whole idea of risk management, of being there for a rainy day, of that kind of thing, might be partially female energy. But I also think that in trading, it's interesting because I find that women make better traders than men, even though there are far fewer of them. And one of the reasons I find that is because men, and this is like throughout my experience on Wall Street and just watching from the outside as well, and just knowing a lot of traders, as men tend to get very sort of ego combined in their trades, right? So it's like, if they have a great trade and it's a great win and it's awesome, but it's like who they are as a human. Whereas I think women are more like, okay, I had a great trade, good, let's move on to the next trade. And they don't necessarily identify with the win or the loss, actually as emotionally, I think, as men do.
Yeah, I think you're totally right.
And so I do think they make better traders.
I think you're right. I used to do the same thing when I was first trading. I would, if my book was up, I had a great day. I felt great. Yeah. And my book was down, I had a bad day. And like 2 years in, I think I was trading in Chicago at the time. I went home one day and I was like, your mood is determined whether interest rates went up or down and you were long or short that day. Yeah. That's ridiculous. Yeah. Like I told myself. And we all know the great traders in bond pits and foreign exchange desks have great discipline. Right? Yes. They take emotion out of the equation.
That's right.
So I would agree with you. Because I think it's just hard as a man. And then again, the man to get on that trading desk, he's probably gone through all the alpha stuff and then the culture of excellence. So you're probably on that edge of the spectrum anyways. And then and then women, because you're dealing with that, particularly in the industry, and then even if you're looking at finance outside, over time you've kind of accepted their behavior and you've become immune to it. And again, taking that part of the emotion out makes you a better trader. I remember one of the young women who worked for me back in London had an altercation with one of the traders on one of the bond desks, and it really upset her. And she comes to me crying and talking about it, and it was verbal. It was, and I wound up saying to her, let me just sort this out. And I go over to the guy on the bond desk, and I'm like, all right, if you ever do that again, we're not providing analytics for you. Now, I didn't go into the whole what it was and we're gonna tell man. It's like, we're just not gonna give you our stuff. Like, I get to make that decision, okay? And and I didn't, and it wasn't an emotional thing. It was literally like, this is a transaction. Okay, this is my analyst. You are pissing her off. Don't. Here's what I can do to bargain with you on the other side of why you're not gonna. And everybody was, and they became everything was fine. From that moment on. But it was not an emotional reaction. She had an emotional reaction. That happens. At my point in where I was at that time in my career, I was just like, no, this is how it's going to go down or not go down. It's your choice. But and I think that's ultimately going back to trading, where not all the trades that I look at for myself make money, but I don't tend to get as emotionally wrapped up in the ones that don't, because I find that will, potentially keep me from doing the next one, and getting up the next day and looking at everything with rules and with discipline, as if nothing happened the day before. And I think that's also what makes for a good trader is literally just, all right, I'm coming to it today. I think that we're starting the beginning of a prolonged period now of a recession or even worse. Hi, it's Brian Rose from London Real. I recently sat down with Nomi Prins, the former Wall Street trader you would have seen on Fox, CNBC, and Bloomberg Television. She regularly advises the Federal Reserve, IMF, and World Bank on important financial policy matters.
I've realized over the years that people don't have the same exposure to trading systems on Wall Street. And so I looked at what are some of the ways that I can create something that regular people on the ground can use to access some of what Wall Street does all the time.
We had an incredible conversation, but what really stood out to me is her brand new 25-cent contract strategy, designed to leverage a little-known market anomaly that happens every day around 10 a.m., if you know what to look for.
The more comfortable you feel with financial elements, the better you'll be at managing them, and the more confident and empowered you'll be in your own life in any aspect of your life, not just with respect to money.
Now, as a former Wall Street trader, I am super excited to share this investment strategy for the very first time. As the host of this episode, I'm able to offer you exclusive rights to a seat at her 25-cent contract live training. But you must act now to secure your spot. So click on the link below or go to londonreal.tv/Nomi, that's N-O-M-I, to secure your spot. And I will see you there.
I myself, my graduate degrees are in statistics and operations research, undergrad in math. So that was always, yes, my kind of angle into Wall Street relative to trading or sales, which was some of the other types of jobs on Wall Street. It was always about the math, the trends, the numbers, the securities, and how they behaved under certain conditions. And that's always what I looked at throughout my entire career on Wall Street. And I always also looked at the downside, not what happens if a trade works, but what happens if it doesn't work. What are the risks you should be looking for, and how can you best, sort of protect that investment for those risks? And so that's what they're a very cheap way of taking an investment into the market, particularly in times of volatility, that take into account what the big sharks are doing, that take into account why volatility is happening, and presents a way for a person to take advantage of that scenario in a cheap way, and in a fast way, and in an easy way.